So my name is Luis, and today we are going to talk about AI. So basically how we introduce AI in our process with the target of reducing the time we spend between the user stories to the actual delivery by 40%. So when we talk about the whole process and the metrics that we have behind, we're going to be talking also about the pain points. So let's talk about the rework, technical debt, and bottlenecks. Basically, every time that a developer delivers something to this next stage, we can face some kind of rework. Why? Because something is not as we expected. So we're going to be reproducing that cycle at least one time, two times, I don't know. But that's the time that we're investing in rework. And that is a pain because we are wasting time instead of just testing the actual feature. We are wasting time in redo something. So we're going to be trying to tackle those kind of problems with AI. Also, technical debt. There are some small pieces of code smells, security issues that we have to face. So why not use AI to anticipate those kind of issues? And the bottleneck. This is a process. So every step that we follow is going to need time to be invested. So if we invest more time in the coding or the review time, then we are going to be waiting more for the actual feature to be tested by the QA team. Okay, so this is a process, right? So each step that we take is in order to convert some requirements into an action feature. So this is going to be taking us, what, hours, days? If this is taking us days, this is something that we can improve. So here is where we can include AI tools in order to improve our process, to expedite the process. So if we talk about AI agents can help us in order to write code for our development team. So the development team is going to become someone that is reviewing someone else's code. But instead of being a person, it's going to be AI. So this is going to expedite how fast we can write code, right? Also, we can use some tools in order to review the code. Because at the end, every process that has to be checked by a review process. And in this case, it's a code review process. So we can also include AI in this part so we can expedite the first comment, the first fixes that we have to make in order to accomplish quality and the requirement that we want to write. Also, we can use AI tools to monitor what is happening in our tracking system, in our repository, so we can be focused on what we need to do in order to deliver something to the QA team. For example, if we talk about AI agents, we can talk about Uni and JetBrains. This is a tool that we can use to convert requirements into actual code. Also, if we talk about AI code reviewers, what we can do, we can include Gitstream from the LinearB tool. This kind of tool is going to introduce comments into our repositories so developers can focus on fixing those kind of comments. This is be something like a code smell, something that is wrong on the requirement that we're trying to fix or we want to write, or basically something that a human can tell us, but instead of waiting minutes or hours, it's going to be happening in seconds. Also, if we are talking about monitoring, so every time that I create a pull request, what is going to happen if someone forgets about that pull request? That one can be sitting waiting for the approval, I don't know, maybe hours, maybe a day. But if we introduce worker beam, we can reduce that time also in seconds. So we're going to be getting alerts, hey, someone has created a pull request, please go and review it. So after we talk about the AI tools that we can introduce in our process, what are our expectations? What are the outcomes of introducing those tools into our process? Well, if we're going to talk about that, we're going to be talking about cycle time, cost saving, and resources efficiency. Why? Because if we improve our process, we are going to be having a better cycle time. We are going to be delivering code faster to the QA team. Then we are going to be able to introduce more work per cycle, and that is going to make us use our resources efficiently. Okay, so as you can notice, we are going to be talking about a lot of AI tools. Some can work as an agent, some can work as a code reviewers, some can do all kind of things for us. So how we can select the right tool for our team? So if we split this in 5 steps, we're going to be talking about launching a pilot. So we can select AI tool, I don't know, for example, the coding agent. Let's select one and test it. Pick a small group so they can focus on how that AI tool is going to be improving their way of working. Then try to move on to the control implementation, how that tool is going to be integrated into our flow, is going to be integrated with the IDE, is something that we're going to be having content switch because we'll have to be moving from one window to another. Then let's assess the iteration. How we can do that? Well, we have metrics, right? We have the cycle time, we have the coding time, the review time. So let's take a snapshot. Let's see how the team behaves before the introduction of the AI tool. And then we can take another snapshot, how those metrics were improved, how much percentage we are better from the before time. And now that we know this tool can do what we expect, let's do the adoption part. How we can adopt this new tool into our process. Well, this is something that we can roll out into our teams because we already analyzed that the result that we are getting from those tools is the one that we expect. And how we can scale it up. Because basically at the beginning we started with a small group, then we expanded to another. Let's talk about the whole company, how we can scale it up for the whole company. Then we're going to be talking about guidelines, and process. Why? Because at the end we have to explain what is the expected result that we are going to get from those kind of tools, how we can adopt it, how we can implement it on our IDE, how we are going to be implemented in our flow, because every time that we move something from a step 1 to a step 2, this kind of tool is going to be helping us doing that. So that's the way that we can try to adopt a new AI tool and how we can assess it. Let's see these kind of AI tools in action. So we're going to be using Juni with JetBrains to see how AI agent works, how we can translate requirements into actual code. Then we are going to be using Gitstream to review that code so we can notice how fast the tool can tell us, hey, we have these mistakes, go ahead and fix it. And then we can also use WorkerBee to get alerts so we can monitor if a PR is stalled or something is missing. So let's see this. Okay, let's take Juni for a spin. In here, as you can see, I already have installed Juni on my development environment. So let's start with something simple. Remember that I mentioned that we can use Juni for several stuff. So right now, what we're going to do is gonna write the user story. Now, this is something that is an example because in the real life, the user story is gonna come from the product owner. But to show you what other capabilities Juni can provide, I'm gonna use it for this kind of tasks. So here is my request. Basically, I'm asking Juni to create a user story from the product owner point of view, and I provide some of tasks, some bullet points I want to be done by Juni. Also, I added a restriction. This is something that we can do to limit what Juni is going to be doing. For this example, I just want the user story. I don't want to make any code changes at the moment. So let's see what it's going to do. So Juni is going to create a plan. This is the plan that is going to be used to implement the changes that we are requesting. In this case, it's going to be used to create a markdown for the user story. So we're going to wait a few seconds or minutes in some cases so we can examine the result. Okay, once the result is given, we can see it in here. So this is a window that where we can inspect the results. In this case, this is the file that it was created, so we can see all the changes. And as we expected, this is a user story, right? So this is the overview, the system's criteria, and also it provided some information about the endpoints. This is something that usually is done by the technical team. So this is like the technical specification of the user story. And also because I asked to provide 3 security recommendations so the technical team or the development team can use it as information when this part is going to be developed. Also, it added something that I didn't request, but this is something nice because it's adding the definition of tone, what we can expect as a change or as a result of the implementation of the user story. So in the next few seconds, we are going to see how we are going to be using this information to provide the details to Uni. So it's going to be doing the code changes. Okay, now let's use Unit to actually implement changes on our source code. So as we did before, here are the instructions that we are going to be giving or providing to Unit. So it's going to be able to make the changes. So basically is the user story that we already have. And also I'm including the guidelines. This is a set of rules that every developer is going to follow every time that is going to make changes in the source code. So also, we can provide some extra code information to Unit. In this case, we can say, hey, this is a markdown where we have the user story, and this is a markdown where we have the guideline. This is not required because Unit is going to read the entire source code and it's going to make changes based on that. So probably it's going to be able to find the user story file and the guideline. So, but this is going to make it easier and faster to instead of actually doing the lookup for those files. So as before, first is gonna create a plan. Based on that plan, is gonna start doing some changes on the source code. So this is gonna take a little longer than the ones we did before because we are making a lot of requests, right? Because we provide some acceptance criteria. We also provide the technical requirements, some API specification. So it's gonna digest all that information and it's gonna make a plan and it's going to make the changes. So as you can see, it's going to try to tell us step by step, this is what I'm doing. So we can double check the information. We can do it right now as it's happening, or we can do it at the end because this information is going to be available for all of us at all the time. So in the meantime, let's see the guideline. This is something uh, basically. So in the meantime, yeah, this is the guideline that we have provided to Juni. As you can see, this is something that is going to have relevant information about our Java convention, REST API, and so on. But the actual information is being documented in this folder. So also, this is something that Uni is going to use as a provider information and it's going to adhere to those guidelines in order to make changes in our source code. So if we can see the file, this is has the entire information. So in here, what we have is the code style, the package structure, and a lot of information that is useful for every new developer that is coming to provide help implementing changes. So we are reusing this information for Uni, so Uni can also adhere to those recommendations, best practices, and standards. As you can see, Uni is asking for permissions. So this is something that is going to happen when he's trying to do some changes in the source code that require an approval. Um, so basically, it's telling, hey, I need to do changes in this kind of property files because it's a property file. It's going to reverse the access. Uh, Basically, every time it's like a double checkpoint. Um, we're going to approve the changes and if he's going to continue doing the changes that is based on the plan that we have here. So this is going to take a few moments, so let's take a break. once Uni is doing changes, we can also inspect the changes while are they happening. For example, if I can go and click over the property file that was just changed, we can see, hey, this is information that is adding to our property file. So basically, it's trying to validate some information. And in this case, uh, it's indicating that the email address cannot be modified. This is a rule that we set on the acceptance criteria. So this is something that June is trying to validate and enforce in the implementation. Also, we can start looking to the app changes on the services. Let's see, for example, if we inspect this one, this is a new file that is implemented. So this is the reason that we don't have like an initial content. Um, but here is the business logic that is implemented right now. So it's gonna try to implement all the acceptance criteria that we have set on the user story. And let's see, this is application that we have based on a different layer. So we have the business logic, then the presentation layer. So this is the changes that they did in the business layer. Now is doing the presentation. This is a base controller. So this is the to expose the endpoints that we are going to be using uh, from the front end side. Mhm. This is something interesting because, as you can see, first it touches the error messages, right? And then is using just application messages. The reason behind that is because in the guideline it says that the errors has to go to this property file, but the actual messages, for example, labels and so on, are written on the application messages. So this is something useful because we are not mixing information, and Uni is kind of respecting that decision from our side. And now, as you can see, is also implementing the test cases, the unit tests for the changes that was made to the source code. This is something that is really important because some of us can struggle to make some changes or to implement tests. So Unity is also helping developers creating those kind of unit tests. And and as you can see, it's using the test model factory. This is something that we had set up on the guidelines. So this is also something that Juni is trying to implement based on our standards. Let's see the test. So as we said, we have some standards while we're doing some tests. So in this case, is using a unit test and it's mocking everything that is around the business logic. The data actors layers and mappers and so on are being mocked. This is something that we kind of use every time that we implement a test. And also, we have set some rules, the naming convention, how we group them, and how we implement every kind of a test case. So again, Juni is respecting every decision that we have made. And instead of providing the same instruction every time that we write the prompt, we write it in the guidelines. So it's going to be reused every time that Juni is going to implement any kind of change on our source code. Again, every time that you see a yellow dot, that means that June is waiting for our decision on something. For example, right now it's trying to execute a command in our terminal. So this is something sensible because I don't know, maybe at some point you can try to access some information that is not allowed. So it's gonna ask the question, hey, can I run this command on your terminal? If we are agree with that, we can just run it or we can skip it. So coming back to what was done on the terminal, basically, Juni tried to run the test using my Maven setup. At the first, it fails. So every time that a step is failed, Juni is going to try to find an alternative and try to execute the same solution or something similar to that in order to uh, run the command, run the instruction, in this case, run the test. So in the second attempt, Juni was able to run it using this command instead of this one. So based on the result, it can say, hey, I'm done with the changes that you requested. So here is the result. These are all the files that were touched or created while the implementation was done. So if we can want to check what was changed, we can just click on the name and we're going to see the difference between the initial content and the new content. Okay, so now as a developer, what can I do with these kind of results? Well, now we're going to change our hat and we're going to say this is something that someone else did. So I want to review it. So I'm going to take some information from the user story and I'm going to try to validate that the actual implementation accomplished those kind of requirements. For example, if we go to the technical requirements, we need some validations around the payload that we are receiving. So how that was implemented in Juni? Okay, so Juni, well, it used the request object to validate that information. For example, the min size for the password, the regular expression that the password has to accomplish in order to say, hey, this is a new valid password that we need to implement, are done with the annotation that we use in Java. Also, if we go to the error handling, it says that we need to use or support internationalization. So how can I validate that? Well, you need use the application resources for the Spanish and for the English languages. So as I can see, I can validate that it uses a new validation error for the email address cannot be modified, and it did the same for the Spanish version. What else? For example, it's gonna adhere to the status code for the changes. So if I go to the controller, I can see that it's implementing a patch. So a patch is gonna return 200 every time that the result is as expected. And if it's not, then it's gonna throw some errors based on that. And those errors are going to be on the 400 spectrum. So as you can see, for developers, it's going to be easier to just double check the information that was requested versus the information that we can find on the source code. Basically, the implementation of uh, those requests. And that's it. That's how Juni is working and is helping us to accelerate our development process because this is an entire change that we implement in a few minutes, right? And we even have tests. So we can go and check those tests and check the scenarios that is trying to validate. For example, all the fields are prior, then the changes has to be done on every single of the fields. What else we have here? For example, if we only make changes on some fields and not on every single field that we have on the request, then those fields has to be changed. The other ones has to remain as they were stored in the database. So as you can see, it's trying to cover all the scenarios based on the requirement that we have. And I think it's actually done a pretty good job because it's covered a lot of our scenarios. If it's something missing, we can still ask more requests to the same plan. So, for example, if I want to, I don't know, change the message that we have stored on the application error message, we can just make the changes on the source code. We can ask Juni for something if it's more complex, right? Than just changing some labels. Now that we have seen these kind of tools in action, let's talk about the outcomes that we can achieve. We can focus on the time that we have saved, the error reduction, and the cost impact. Why? because as you notice, the time that we spent writing the code was actually none, because the developer only typed the requirement, the AI agent wrote the code, and we just did like a little inspection on how the result was achieved. So at least we are going to be saving 30 to 50% in time. Also, the error reduction. Why? Because these AI tools use repositories and other developers' experience to write the actual code. So this is going to have less errors. And if we talk about the cost impact, we are going to be expecting the 20 to 30% reduction, because we are spending less time writing the actual code and more time analyzing the results, moving forward that requirement to the QA team. So those are the outcomes that we're going to be getting from implementing AI tool into our process and into our daily life. Okay. So let's talk about the future, so how we can introduce AI not only for the development part. As you can see, we have talked about coding, code review, but actually we can introduce AI in the whole process, since the moment that we write the user story until the moment that we deliver. We can automate how we can write the user story, what are the parts are going to be held on that kind of resources. Also, we can use AI to do the actual test, to write it and to test it. And how we can use AI to automate the process of delivering the solution to our final users. Basically, we are talking about a process from the very beginning to the delivering process to the customers. Okay, if we keep talking about how AI tool can improve our development process. So we focus right now on the coding and the review time, but we can also use AI for the actual breakdown of the work. Why? Because at the end, we have a user story with a lot of criteria. So we can break down all those criteria in a single pieces, so we can deliver those pieces even faster, because they are smaller, they are easier to analyze, and they are easier to code. Also, we can use to test, right? So at the end, we have some code that was written by AI, but the AI tool can also write the code in order to test it. This is going to help us to automate unit testing, integration tests, and furthermore, when the QA team is doing the actual testing of the feature. Okay, so let's go a little crazy. What else AI can do for us? So if we talk about the development phases, we also face bottlenecks, something that is blocking our work, something that is blocking the feature to be delivered to the next stage. So what if the AI, instead of just saying, hey, this is a blocker, this is something that you need to fix, the actual AI is going to fix it. So this is going to streamline the process even more. Also, what if we take the AI tool and get the user story and transform it into actual actionable tests? So instead of having a people doing the manual test, the AI can do it for us. Also, that is going to help us to improve our cycle time. And at the end, what if the AI became something that we can use from the very beginning to the end? So every time that we receive a new need from our customers, we can transform it using AI into actual feature that we can deliver even faster to our production environments. Okay, so what we can expect in the near future? Well, we can expect the AI tool to be in the whole process, from the beginning to the actual delivery of the product. This is going to help us to deliver product faster than we expected and faster than we are doing right now, at least 40% as we talk. Also, if we talk about the process, how is going to be AI helping us to do that? So it's going to be helping us with the planning process, how much work we can introduce. At least we can double up the kind of work that we can do in the same period of time. It's going to help us testing it, and it's going to be holistic. Why? Because regardless of the programming language that we select, AI tools can do it, right? We cannot just face one language for this thing. So as humans, when we face this kind of process, we simply think in steps. So we have to write the code, review it, test it, and deliver it. But for the AI, it's different. They can blend all together. So we can basically use the planning, the coding, the testing, and launching process in a single step on something that is going to be seamless for the AI. So we are going to be just throwing some ideas to the tool and getting the result at the end. So this is something that we can expect in the near future from the AI tools. Now that we have talked about what we can get from the AI, so the development process is going to become very simple. This is going to be very fast. So now what we can do, what we can take a vitals from the AI and focus on the next thing, what we can expect from the future after we introduce AI into our process. Well, thank you for your time. My name is Luis, and I'm really enjoying this kind of talking about the AI tools, how we can improve our process, and how we can take advantage for it. Let's talk about in the future about this kind of process and how we can adopt them.